Okay, so in this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show people how to get AutoCAD and to do a quick, as much as I can get done in 15 minutes, an AutoCAD tutorial. So first of all, what you're going to type in is you're going to type in AutoCAD student, right, which I've got here, AutoCAD student. Now, if you look at the second option after the ad, right, the first one after the ad is free student software downloads. Okay, so I'm going to click on that. And then I want to click AutoCAD because that's what we're going to use. Now, you're going to have to create an account, right? So I need an account, create an account, right? And when you do that, it'll ask you to enter in your student number and it'll end up sending you a code and things. Once you've done that, you can then sign in and eventually you'll be able to install your software. If you have any problems beyond that, you need to let me know, but that's the general idea. You guys should be able to manage that. So that's the starting point. Once eventually you get that, you're going to get the applications available on Mac and PC, AutoCAD Lite 2018. So when I open this up, now AutoCAD is text-based. Now there are now whole bunch of windows, but in the early days of AutoCAD, people really just typed in commands to do pretty much everything they wanted to do. And they've still maintained this functionality. Super users, people who use AutoCAD every day, they have one hand on the keyboard, one hand on the mouse. That's very common. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at ways that we're going to produce our shape. Now we're going to produce a very simple shape. We're going to produce a Warren truss. Now I produced already a 3mm Warren truss, and I'm now going to, this time I'm going to produce a 7mm Warren truss. The reason, when I say that, that means that I bought 3mm ply, and you guys are probably going to use 3mm ply, but because it wasn't quite strong enough, I have 7mm ply as well. Now, I could take my original drawing and scale it, but I'm going to create a new drawing. So, to start off with, up near the A, I have the symbol for new, or I could go to File, Create New somewhere here, surely. Start Drawing I could probably do. But I'm going to go with this one here, New. Okay, now it's going to ask me what kind of template do I want this to be based on? And I will just go with this generic one, right? The one that doesn't say anything on it. Okay, so I've got a drawing. I haven't got anything too much going on here. I can zoom in and out with my mouse. Typically, you're not really encouraged to do that, but that's fine. There's another thing you should not encourage to do, which is to use Control-C or Control-V for copy and paste, because there's a function in AutoCAD that has copy, and it's very useful. That said, it's no longer as bad as it used to be if you do that. The main commands that you really want to use are line, polyline, circle, and arc. They are the main commands that everyone wants to use. Now, for starters, we're going to use a line. And to type a line, we're just going to hit the letter L. And when we type in the letter L and hit enter, it says line, specify your first point. Now, you can see here that I have a text line down the bottom, a text box down the bottom. Now, that I can move around if I don't want it there anymore. Or I can make it across the whole thing. But you can see next to the cursor, I now have the input next to the location. You can see as I move around here, well, here both numbers are positive. Here the Y value is negative. Here both net values are negative. Here the X value is negative. So I'm going to enter in 0, 0. And I'm going to start from 0, 0. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to type in a distance. Now, when I did my last one, I think I did it at 100 millimeters. So this time around, I'm going to do it at 150 millimeters, right? Because I want to make it slightly bigger. So I'm going to type in 150. And because I want to type in a Warren truss has equilateral triangles. What angle do I want to be at? 60. So when I do that, to type in the angle, I have to use the less than sign. So I type in 150 less than. Now less than is to press shift comma will give me a less than sign. Can you see that? Now it's measuring 60. It's important that by default my intuition is that 0 should be measured from the y-axis, from north, right? That's what I think it should be. However, just like maths, we measure all of our angles from the horizontal going anti-clockwise. Bonkers. But by default, that's what it does. Now, you can change it, especially if you do a lot of, say, survey work where you're using survey coordinates, bearings. You can change it so that the angles are 360 is straight up, 90 is to the left. You eventually get used to either way. I don't really care enough to change it. So I'm going to hit 60, and it's going to give me a line that's 60 degrees. Now, can you see how I no longer fit everything on my screen? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Escape, and I'm going to press Z for zoom, and then I can see how I've got one of my letters is highlighted for each of these. So to zoom the whole thing is A. Now to zoom to a scale is S, but I'm going to do zoom extends, which means to show everything there. So zoom extends. Now that's still not enough, so I'm going to zoom out a little bit just using my mouse, because, do as I say, not as I do. Okay, so I'm going to use L again to introduce a line, and my starting point, I'm going to snap to that location. Now, for you guys, snapping is probably not an uncommon thing. Sometimes you might want to turn off snapping, but most of the time snapping is pretty useful. You can change the snapping preferences later. Okay. Now, for the moment, I'm just only going to make this short. I'm only going to make this 200, which is, I know, not long enough because I've got reasons, right? And I'm going to create another line. I'm going to press L, and I'm going to snap to my location 0, 0, and I'm going to go 200 again. Again, I know that this isn't long enough. Now, what I'm going to do now is I am going to offset this line. I'm going to produce a line that is offset by a certain amount. It's going to have a margin of a certain amount. Now, I said that I want to have my sections to all be 7mm by 7mm. I know that my piece of plywood is 7mm thick, so I'm going to want my sides, the sides of my trusses, to be 7mm, so that way I have a square section. That's going to work way better for us figuring out things. Okay, so I'm going to press O for offset. And you can see as I type O, it shows you, do you mean open, or OP for options? All of these different things. I just want O for offset, so I'm going to press O, enter. Now it says, how much do I want the margin, the offset distance, to be? Well, in my case, we've just said 7. Now I want to select the object to offset. And you can see how it's showing me a preview up here. Right? No, but I don't want it on that side. I want it on this side. I want it inside the shape. Okay, so I've just done that. Now I can also click this object and see how I can do multiple offsets at the same time. It's pretty convenient. Okay, the next command I'm going to use, I'm pressing escape. I'm going to type a new command. I'm going to type in MI for mirror and hit enter. Now it says select objects. Now it's really important you read the prompts. I want to mirror this object. Okay, and when I've selected all my objects, I can hit spacebar or enter. Now it says I want to create a mirror line, and it says specify the first point of the mirror line. So basically, where do I want my axis of symmetry to be? Well, if I zoom in, I want my axis of symmetry to be at this point here. And can you see how the snapping option helps me to keep all my lines as orthogonal lines? If I press shift, it also helps me that it will only let me do orthogonal lines. So see how it says there, it tells me the angle at 270 is straight down. Okay, so I've now created a line that is perfectly at 60 degrees, perfectly the same size because it's been, we've used the mirror command. Okay, so now do I want to erase my original source? Now this is the problem where people keep deleting their objects. They don't know why mirror deletes their objects, because if you hit in no by default, you could have a problem, right? So it might do. So do we want to erase it? No. We want to go with the default? No. Okay. Now I want to offset again. I want to offset 7mm. Boom. Okay. Now I want to mirror again. So I'm going to select this object. It's going to be the object I'm going to mirror. I'm going to draw this line straight up. Boom. And then I'm going to offset again. Specify distance. Specify object. Specify side. Done. Then I'm going to go back and I'm going to mirror again. So I'm going to mirror this object. And then I'm going to specify size. Boom. Okay. I think 3 is probably enough. I don't know. So that's 150. So it's going to be 150. It's going to be 300. Yeah, 450. Look, we could do 2. Look, we'll finish this one off now. So we'll offset this one here. To offset this one, so we want 700. So 7mm, and that's 7mm there. Now, what I need to do now is I need to trim or extend my lines. Now, if you've escaped so that there's nothing selected, no command extend, you can now actually extend pretty easily in AutoCAD. Back in the day, though, what you would do is you would use the extend command, which is EX, which was extend, and it'd say select objects you want to extend, boom, okay, and then I want to go to a fence, and the fence is the distance that I wanted to choose. Actually, I wanted to extend to an object, I tell a lie. So EX, select object, boom, and then I want to go to crossing maybe. Yeah, I don't know. Don't care enough to figure that out. Good tutorial, huh, puns? Okay, I'm going to use the trim command. I have a question, Lewis. Okay, the next command I'm going to show you is the trim command. So to do trim, I do TR, and so I have to select objects. Now, I'm actually going to select every single object. Boom. Now, AutoCAD, it's worth pointing out that AutoCAD, if you do objects this way, it'll select any object it touches. If you go this way, the blue way, it only selects objects that's completely within that boundary. Yeah, so if we look at this, we're going to get only those shapes. Whereas if we go this way, the same rectangle will select everything. Yep. Now, I'm going to select every object, trim. We've already selected objects. Okay, I'm going to just do it the right way. I'm going to do TR, select objects, select everything, enter, and then what I can do is I can just start removing the excess parts. And effectively what it does is wherever I have a fence, it's going to create, now the reason it doesn't let me do those parts is because they're separated from the main object now. Okay. Again, it won't let me trim that object because it's not connected to the main object. Okay, so to then I'm going to use E for erase, right? And I'm just going to erase. I'm selecting the objects that I want to erase. That's why they're grey and not just disappeared. And then when I hit enter, they've gone. Okay, I can also use delete. Like so, these days. Two at the bottom? Okay. So, well, okay, I could just show you, I could just select them. Oh, yeah, no, I don't want to do that. I have to use trim, select these objects, and then hopefully that should get them. Boom. Okay, thank you for that. Okay, because that would be bad. If I used the laser cutter, that would cut through those members, they wouldn't be joined, it would be bad. Okay. So now I want to print my object, print my thing. So the first thing I want to do is I have to make all of my lines. I have to specify the line type that I can use and the color. So to do that, I'm going to be figuring out a few things as I go here. What I want is layer properties. I'm going to pause while I figure this out. Okay, so it was in fact, yeah, the properties tab here. That's one way of getting to it, and this should work. So I've selected everything. What I'm going to do is I want to change my color, not to layer. I want to change it to red, and I need to change my line weight. My line weight to 0.0 millimeters. Now, in other programs like Illustrator, you can use 0.01. They won't allow you to have a 0 thickness line. But what we want to do is we want to have as close to 0 as possible. Okay, so now that we've changed our color to red and our line weight to 0.00, we're now ready to print. So we go to print, or plot is technically the term they use. Okay, so a couple of things. First of all, what do we want to plot? Do we want to plot everything we can see, which would be display, or everything on the screen, which is extent? Or if we want, we can use window, and window will just say everything in the window that we've selected. So I've selected that window, that's what it's going to show. That's really important. The next thing is, I like to center the plot, right? The important that you have a scale. Now, okay, but before I get to scale, yeah, we'll do scale because I mentioned it. I don't want to fit to paper. That is terrible, right? I want to have a scale of 1 to 1. I did it in millimeters. I want to keep it in millimeters. Okay. So specifies the unit. So I've done my unit in millimeters. I need to specify here that all my units are going to be millimeters. So that may have been because I haven't used this. I can set my default unit when I start, but yeah, so 1 millimeter equals 1 unit. Okay, center plot. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say that I want to print this out on a piece of paper that is an A3 piece of paper, an ISO A3 piece of paper. Okay, so when I've done all that, I can do a preview if I want. I'm not sure why it's not allowing the preview button, but we're going to put it on landscape, and we're going to click OK. Oh.